Not. Anybody in the center portion? Mr. Gariepy?
I wanted to talk to you guys during the communications from citizens section of the meeting about the 20% reduction in worker pay and the associated 4-day work week that Mr. Vanderpool's administration has advised will go into effect sometime this summer, unless suitable savings are found via labor negotiations or some other cost reduction. I'm really concerned about this. Not being an employee that works for a labor union, I realize that my concern about this might seem a little bit odd to some of you, but I am an employee. I've never owned a business, and I've always been reliant on the people that I work for to take good care of me. Fortunately, my skills have been such that, you know, I've been able to negotiate for myself a fairly comfortable living, but I got to tell you, when they took 10 and then 15% of my wages away a couple of years ago, it hurt. It hurt an awful lot. I look at this situation, and the thing that works in my mind is that this is a labor negotiation tactic. And I think it's a lousy, dirty, rotten thing to do to the people that work for you. I really and truly do. I think it's an awful thing to say to somebody that your job is only worth 80% of what it was last week. That's terrible. And I think that the people who come up with that idea ought to be ashamed of themselves, quite frankly. You know, what it is it's a scare tactic. And I think scare tactics are really the mark of poor negotiators. The other thing I think is going on in the background here is that you're setting us, the residents, up for a tax increase. Because if you can't get the union to budge, then the natural next place that you're going to go to is the residents and say, hey, look, you know, we're going to have to start shutting stuff down altogether. And frankly, I think that our tax rate is high enough. I really do. You know, cutting back on everything but public safety might appease a section of the workforce, and it might appease a segment of the resident population. But frankly, nobody who's had a look at the city's finances believes for a second that we're going to come out of this financial storm that we're in without some reasonable compromises in terms of what we spend on public safety. I don't see how it's possible. A very large percentage of the budget goes towards public safety, and we're going to have to come up with a way to reduce what we're spending. You're also creating animosity in the workforce between the people who work for public safety and the people who don't. And I think that's a really rotten thing to do. You're pitting your own employees against each other. And I can't see how in good conscience you could do that. Reasonable yet tolerable cuts is the thing that I think is what we need to be looking for in public safety. And I think that implies reducing the multi-departmental responses to things like traffic accidents that we're seeing now. I think it might involve outsourcing the emergency transport altogether. Why do we need to have the cops and the fire department show up for a heart attack? It doesn't make any sense. There's no question that public safety cuts are going to become a reality. They already have. We went to the Command Officers Association and we unilaterally said, we're cutting your work hours back to 37.5 hours a week. That's a 6% reduction. And what that says to me is we can do without 6% of that workforce. Why the heck didn't we just cut 6% of the employees, as painful as that might be, and avoid the lawsuit and avoid cutting everybody's paycheck? I realize that we want to be fair, but the reality is that the people who are left behind still have to do the job for us every day, folks. And it's much, much better to just get over with the pain and be done with it. Finally, you know, as a resident who pays his own taxes 2 times a year on time, I can't see a way that cutting back, you know, to a 4-day work week or cutting 20% wages or going to 30 hours, whatever it is, I don't see how I'm getting my money's worth out of this deal, okay? You know, I'm told that the city has been working against a financial plan, and all of a sudden we figured out that, hey, you know what, the housing market is not going to rebound. Now, I am not, I'm not a degreed accountant, I'm not an economist, I'm a computer programmer with an information systems degree, and I was able to tell you 3 years ago that this housing market was in a downspin and it was going to stay that way for years. We just figured that out. The best and brightest financial minds we could hire just figured that out. I'm sorry, I find that very disappointing, and I think that there ought to be some accountability for that mistake. Where is the accountability? Should heads roll? Do we need different people up there? I think that the very strong possibility exists that we do. You know, one final thing about the labor attorney and everything else. We've got a Command Officers Association that's suing us. We've got a dispatch department that's all fearful for their jobs. Okay? We could have not spent $50,000 and got that. And in return, what we're creating is long-term animosity, and it's just not going to get any better, guys. We'll get through this little storm, but everybody's going to remember what you did to them, and I don't think it's right. One final thing, I write about city politics. You guys all know that. I have a little website. It's at sterlinghts.net. I'd appreciate it if you all checked into it, because I've got all the labor contracts, I've got all the memorandums of understanding. You don't have to go digging through anything to find them. My information is more complete than the Mackinac Center for Public Policies is. And I'd appreciate it if you and the residents would get involved and have a discussion, because as a city, we need to come together and fix this.